Hi everyone and welcome back to the 7th episode of the South Yorkshire Women's Football Podcast. Today we've got Women's Technical Director and UEFA A licence coach Katie Rowson on the pod. She talks about her illustrious career.
And within 3 weeks I was on a plane to the British Virgin Islands, and it was an unbelievable experience.
And she even gives insight into what happened at Doncaster Rovers Belles in 2018.
Bigger picture is it's not just about promotion relegation, it's about the growth of the women's game, and it's to make sure that the growth of the women's game is sustainable.
All that and more coming up. Let's head over to the episode with Katie now. Could you just explain to the listeners a bit about what your role involves at the moment, sort of how you're structured day to day, and about a bit about your background in football as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem at all. So right now I'm with Aberdeen FC women's first team. It's essentially, my title is essentially a dual role. So I am looking at the strategic kind of planning and sustainability and progress of the women's first team. But also I'm on the grass as well, assisting the head coach, Scott Booth. So from a day-to-day point of view, it's very much zooming in and zooming out in terms of trying to look at the big picture and trying to look at the strategy. And especially I've only been there 6 months. So understanding where the program's been before, understanding that historical context and where the program wants to go, and then how I can positively impact that from strategy and processes point of view. And then the zoom in bit is, like I said, I'm with the head coach and the technical team and the multidisciplinary team, on the pitch and getting organised for that in terms of making sure that we are communicating effectively as a multidisciplinary team. One of the things is that the team has grown quite significantly over the last 6 months with new full-time members of staff in. So understanding how we work through those processes of communication to make sure that when we're on the pitch, we're delivering in the most efficient way that we can and delivering the best content and having the most impact and the positive impact on the players. So then in turn, they can be prepared, ready for on pitch. So that I always talk about it in terms of that zoom in, zoom out in terms of a day-to-day basis with how my role is. It's a fabulous club. I've only been there 6 months, but it's a fabulous club all around. It's probably the friendliest club I think I've ever been to. And there is a really good one club mentality. And we're in a situation now where the emphasis is on understanding where the women's team is and seeing what is the potential for that progression.
Why did you want to sort of get into the role that you're in today? What's your pathway? There's two parts to this question. What's your pathway been like, sort of through your coaching career, and how is it led up to where you're at the moment?
Yeah, I've had a really varied career within football, and when I say varied, I mean lots of different types of roles. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I've been in the game too long. Not too long. It just gives away my age. I've been in the game for over 20 years, mm-hmm. And prior to now, where there might seem to be a lot of different opportunities, you can almost go, right, I want to be a sports analyst and go down that route, or I want to be a coach, or I want to be a sports science, and you can almost choose that now, and that there's access and there's opportunities to do that. When I first started, there wasn't those opportunities within women's football. So I started as a coach, and I still absolutely love coaching. I still love being on the grass. But my roles have been varied because I've just taken opportunities when they've arisen. So like I said, I wasn't able to go, I want to be X, so I'm going to go down that path. It was okay, I want to be primarily, can I get a full-time role in women's football at the elite stroke performance level? And it might seem bizarre to say it now, but that wasn't always a thing. Yeah. So there was very many times where you're like, will this job, whether it's a strategy or whether it's coaching or whether it's doing some operations or whether it's doing some analysis, will this job get me to where I want to be, which is full-time role in women's performance and women's elite pathway. So that's why I've had varied job roles. But what's sometimes that goes against me, because people say, oh, you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. But actually, over the last couple of years, I've really taken it as a positive, because I would really like to work towards that strategy kind of role, whether that be that sporting director, or like I've previously held a technical director role. And what it does is it gives me an opportunity to showcase my experience and my skills in all levels. So from analysis to sports science to being able to do the strategy to being experienced as a head coach. So I'm really proud of my my journey. It certainly has been an adventure, taking me to different countries. And I'm really pleased in the position that I'm in now, where I'm actually doing that dual role. And yeah, exciting to see where the future takes me.
What are the main sort of learning experiences you've taken from your sort of coaching career so far? I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the different roles you've had in a moment, but you've been in the game for as you say, over 20 years. I didn't want to make
I never like
to
give away my age. That's my issue. But yeah, I've been in the game a long time. But I guess the biggest learnings is from a personal point of view, it's always been about like committing to the cause in the moment and almost having an all-in attitude. There is a downfall for that. I'm terrible at my work-life balance. Once I'm in, and I'm going to do anything to make a positive impact. Yeah. But I think that's really helped me, because like I said, I've then been able to take on different roles. I've been able to learn in different roles, because learning's a big part about it, because the game is forever changing. Yeah. The game and the surroundings and the environment. So that's one of the big things. And I'd say another big thing is around that self-awareness, and that self-awareness of how you work, what you enjoy doing, what you don't like doing. Because I think that helps you on your journey, but it also helps you work with other people. And I think that self-awareness, if you could just constantly work on that, understand what your philosophy is. People talk about philosophies all the time. People talk about game models, so that I see them as slightly two different things. But understand your values. But it's not just understanding them. It's, well, why do you have that approach, and how does that play out positively? How does that play out negatively? It could be a challenge sometimes. Like I said, me knowing that I'm a workaholic, so I know that that's a challenge, and it's a work on for me. So I would definitely say that commitment, and then that self-awareness, and then I guess what wraps up both of them is to be open to learning and open to understand different people's views, because at the end of the day, it's football, and I love football so much, but actually it's a vehicle for people development, whether that's a player. I'm very much around, it doesn't matter whether you're a player or an owner or a coach or a sports scientist. We're all humans, and we've got to figure out how on earth we can connect and combine and communicate to get the best out of the environment that we're in. So it's about learning and being open to other people's ways of working and opinions.
You've sort of mentioned the challenges aspects of your work. What are the main challenges you've sort of come across so far in your career?
I think over the course of the career, it's about the opportunities and maybe not being able to get those full-time opportunities. So there have been many years of my career where the work that I was doing in football was it was almost a full-time role, part-time pay, and having to have another job alongside it. I think that's always been a bit of a struggle. And like I said, I think now in the general landscape that there are more opportunities to go into full-time, so you can really commit to that. So I think that's, over the course of my career, that's been really, really tough to do that juggling. And then is it a challenge? I was going to say, obviously the development of the game is going so fast that there is sometimes a challenge where the environment that you go into, you're always trying to play catch up to trying to stabilize the club or the program, or where the owners or the decision makers want the program now, and trying to stabilize it to get it to where they want it. But actually the game is growing so fast that you've got to keep moving, so that you always seem to be in a state of change.
Your role as the technical director of the British Virgin Islands FA, just that's right, isn't it? That's the right title. Just give me a little bit of an insight into what that is, and how does someone get involved in something like that? Because it seems very official, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I love that role. I love that role so much. I'm all about impact and trying to make that positive impact. And I felt like I always see that as a highlight in my career, because I felt like I'd made a real positive impact. Maybe I'm not the one that should say that. Maybe that it should be the people that felt affected or positively impacted who are actually in the British Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
But essentially, as we know, FIFA is the global governing body and has X amount of member associations. So at the time, there were 207 member associations, of which the British Virgin Islands is a member association of FIFA. And they needed a technical director, but I didn't just go straight in as a technical director. I was invited out to look after the team or manage the team for the women's under-20s World Cup qualifiers. So it was back in 2013, if I've got my dates right. 2013, the British Virgin Islands were actually hosting a qualifying tournament to get into the World Cup. So they were hosting it, and they wanted somebody to come in and look after that project. So how it came about is I was on a mentoring scheme with the FA, preparing for my A license. Right. So Brent Hills, who at the time was Hope Powell's assistant to England Women, he has always been a fabulous coach mentor, and he was running a scheme where some of us were working towards our A license, and the invitation came through that to apply. And again, that just came through kind of FIFA and the British Virgin Islands and the FA talking and saying, would you have a pool of people that we could contact? And I just happened to be in that pool. I applied. I got through the interview process, and within 3 weeks, I was on a plane to the British Virgin Islands, and it was an unbelievable experience. I always say I learned more in that 3 weeks of that project than I had maybe in the last 3 years, and that wasn't to dismiss the previous 3 years. It was just a ridiculously steep learning curve going straight in World Cup qualifiers. And I absolutely loved it. Worked with a fabulous group of people, a fabulous group of players. We hosted the tournament, and the British Virgin Islands enjoyed my work, and they asked me to go back the following year. Similar project, under 15 girls in the CONCACAF Championships.
Right.
And I went and did that. Again, brilliant, different challenge, slightly younger girls. Obviously, I had got a little bit more knowledge about it, but a bigger tournament, and a tournament that was held in the Cayman Islands. So I did that, and the British Virgin Islands said, we really like what you do. Actually, we've got a spot for our technical director role. So again, went through an interview process and went through all that, and then I ended up looking after the technical division there, which was brilliant because I looked after, we implemented a coach development scheme. I was heavily involved in the Centre of Excellence scheme, getting a pathway for the national team, looking after the under 13 boys, under 15 boys, under 15 girls, all the way through. So worked with the national team coach with the men, who's a fabulous coach and is still there now, along with a lot of the other coaches. So yeah, fabulous time.
Okay, I'll ask you the sort of the crux of our brand, the sort of the South Yorkshire take on your career. So just tell me a little bit about your role for our listeners and watchers, about your role at Doncaster Rovers Belles.
Yeah, fabulous time. I was asked, or I interviewed and got selected and asked to go in as the technical director of what was then the RTC, so the Regional Talent Club. So the club at that youth level had a license to essentially run a club that was recognised by the English FA, to be on the player pathway. I worked under Julie, and she was the academy manager. Julie Grundy, she was the academy manager, and then I did the on pitch and the coaching part of it. So we had squads at under 12s, under 14s, and under 16s. At the same time, I think I said earlier about part-time roles, full-time roles. So alongside that role, I was also asked to interview and be part of Emma Coates's technical team and to assist her with the first team. And I absolutely love that for the reason of being able to really work with the coaches and really work with the players at the RTC and really understand, well, what is it that you would need to be a first team player? And I think the pathway that we had at that time, and it was known for it, is to be able to bring players through. But it was because the club did such a great had a great structure that it wasn't just me, it was other people that they had in, made sure that we really understand, like, what is it that we want at first team, and actually how does that differentiate and disseminate down to an under 12 player. So it was a very, very busy time, but a fabulous time. And to go into a club with such history on the women's side, and to have so many influential people like Chippy, who was there, and Sheila. It was a fabulous time. I'm working under Emma Coates, and obviously now she's gone on to be with England for such a long time and heading up the 23s at the moment. So yeah, brilliant, busy time, brilliant time, and some fabulous players that were in that pathway.
What's it like representing a club of sort of that magnitude? Over a period of time? I imagine it's a sort of highlight of your career and probably a bit of a privilege as well.
Oh, it absolutely is. And you really felt that history when you walked into the club. You really felt that history, but there was also and this was led by Emma and Chippy and Julie and Sheila. It was really led to say, well, but we don't rest on our laurels. Yeah. We don't just, it's not just about the history. Actually, what are we doing now? What are we doing today? How are we positively impacting players today? And how are we positively impacting people, environment, stakeholders to push the club forward? And I think that was fabulous to have that history. I think that was probably the first club I'd worked at that had so much history. And also we played at the stadium, which was, week in, week out. And I think that was quite different at the time to any other club that I'd worked at. And just being able to, recognize that history, but also build in it and not rest on our laurels.
What was the club first like when you joined compared to when you left? And if you don't mind, could you just sort of tell me a little bit about leaving the club and what that was like as well?
Yeah, it's always difficult. It's always difficult when you leave because, again, I'm an impact person. I really want to make a positive impact. So when you depart a club, and it happens in football, you kind of question, well, did I make a good enough impact? But Emma had the fabulous opportunity to go and be part of the England setup, which was unbelievable. Like I said, she's still there now, which was fantastic. So they asked me to step in as interim while they found another coach. So it was always interim. So I think I was interim for a few games. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And then they brought in Neil Redfern. Which again, I got to meet Neil. I got to work alongside him. Absolutely fabulous coach. Learned so much from him. So they took on Neil, and I could have at that point. I believe that I could have carried on with just doing the RTC technical director role, but it halved my job in terms of then it was. I was still having to do another job alongside. And I felt at the time that it was probably the right thing to do. The club had moved on from Emma. I did the little bit of an interim. They brought Neil in, which was a fabulous move for the girls, and they obviously went on and won the league. And I just felt it was probably the right time to kind of move on and let the club move into that new era. So it's always sad when you leave. Always sad. I always keep an eye on players, and I know I still keep in touch with Julie Grundy, who's now heading up the academy at Celtic, and we crossed paths when I went to Everton and she was at Liverpool. So always keep in touch. I see Emma almost every time that I'm at St George's Park, so we always cross paths. So yeah, really fabulous memories. Nothing lasts forever. But yeah, they went on and won the league. And, that if you look at the players that were in that first team at that time and where some of them are now as well, it just shows that they had such a fantastic team at the time.
In that time frame that you were at the club, what sort of progression and development did you see in women's football at Donny Belles?
Maybe I'm biased. I think it was the player pathway.
Yeah.
I think really aligning that. There'd been a fabulous structure beforehand, but I think I really took that idea of the positive impact would be to really align it. So we really aligned our playing principles. We had, and again, a part of progressing with the RTC was to make sure that we had a curriculum that the players followed, and that was differentiated between the different either stages or ages.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that we really did was align that. And then the other, to be able to align that was to work with the coaches and the coach development. So lots of like little study visits over to the first team, and really making sure that we understood, if we're talking about that playing principle, well, what does that mean to the first team, and how does that differentiate down? So again, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. We probably need to ask the people that were there at the time, but I think it was that alignment. It wasn't because we trained on different sites, so it isn't, sometimes you got to work a little bit harder on that alignment. So to be able to do that in the work that we were doing, and we really progressed that, and we really got some players through, and really proud of the work I did.
Can I ask you about the 2018 season and the when you were promoted and then you had to withdraw? Do you sort of remember where you were and sort of what you were doing, and could you just sort of run us through that experience? Because I imagine it's quite a unique thing for players and coaches and staff to go through.
It is, but we as backroom staff understand that the growth of the game, because it's really hard, because it's not just about that one moment.
Yeah.
And it's not just about promotion relegation. Again, this is my strategy bit, zoom out and kind of go, right, bigger picture is, it's not just about promotion relegation, it's about the growth of the women's game, and it's to make sure that the growth of the women's game is sustainable. And sustainability means, have you got things in place to meet the license requirements? And a lot of those things are around facilities, are around budgets being ring fenced for certain aspects, whether that be for workforce or whether that be, I think at the time there was a lot in around marketing and publicizing and getting people to games, and there were certain things that had to be ring fenced. This isn't just around Doncaster Belles. When I was there at the time, this is a lot of clubs understanding, what is it going to take, and you don't just sign up for 1 year. Like, it's not, oh, you're going to get promoted and you've got to sign up to hit this license. You've got to be able to show and prove that you can sustain that if you then stay in the league. So I understood that part of it, and I understand that now, and I've always understood that. And obviously there's been recent news. I know it's not South Yorkshire, but recent news in terms of Wolves and their women's team. It's the same situation, almost not the same details, but the same situation. So I understood it from that point of view. I wasn't necessarily, in with all the details, and I wasn't a decision maker. But I fully understand that at the time it was a decision made from a sustainability point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But I know from the outside, or from the external perception, is that that maybe wasn't deemed good enough, and that maybe showed that it wasn't progressing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have a different view on that, because it was around the sustainability of the club, and I also understand why those license criteria have to be in from a governing body point of view.
From your sort of outside, I know we're really sort of chopping and changing in terms of timeframes here, but from the outside perspective now, obviously you've not been at Donny Belles for sort of quite a few years, but are you surprised by sort of how far they've fallen through the tiers? How do you feel about that? What's your opinion on it?
I think initially, obviously, winning the league, and just doing, being at the upper echelons of WSL2 for a good few years, and then winning the league, you really you shouldn't think it. Because I've already said in this interview that it's always changing, right? But you kind of thought, even when I departed the club, you kind of thought, well, they would always be there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fall down the leagues is really, really heart-wrenching, because it's heart-wrenching for the club. It's heart-wrenching for all the players that invested all that time. At one point, at one point, over a long period of time, players would look to, Doncaster Belles is where I want to be. Like, oh my goodness, Doncaster Belles have come in for me. Like, I want it. Like, it wouldn't be Doncaster Belles called you up and said, we want you to play for us. There wouldn't be any other questions. They'd just be like, okay, where do I need to be? Where do I need to be at what time? So I think the impact from club players, people that have invested their time, workforce, and the community, I think in that region, to be able to have a Doncaster Belles alongside, the Sheffield FC and Sheffield United, and a few other clubs around there. It's really, really hard for that impact maybe to not be as positive, but it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of work to run football clubs. And if from a business point of view, it's not there, you can't force it, because you've got to try and be sustainable. So it is unfortunate, but what I'd like to think is that there is still a pathway for players. There is still a pathway. There's still a pathway through the ETC. There is still a pathway through the first team. But maybe then there's a ceiling because of where that first team is, and that probably means that you're always producing players for essentially somebody else, because at some point they will move on if they want to, or if they're good enough to move on, and that's part of the ecosystem of football. I think I listen, I've been in this game long enough that maybe that's why I'm gutted, but at the same time it's part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it all goes in cycles, right? Who's to say what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years time?
Yeah.
And we could be almost reversing this conversation. And as much as when we're in it and we're in the down bit of that, we don't like it. We're all in football because we like the roller coaster. Yeah. There's nobody that doesn't enjoy the roller coaster. So, and it goes in cycles. So at the moment, that is where it is. But I'd love it. I'd love it if they were able to get back up the tiers and to bring back the history to the forefront.
I know you've talked about women's football sort of evolving, but how have you seen it evolve over your time in football?
I think the professionalisation.
Yeah.
And it's the professionalisation, and I'm not just talking from a monetary point of view. I think a professionalisation of, there's a lot more women's first team programs or women academy programs that are now within a men's club. Yeah. Although we're almost on the curve on the other side when you look at with Chelsea. with Chelsea women and how they've come out the other side almost. But I think that, there was a lot of independent clubs, and now they're rolling into being looked after under the umbrella of this one club ethos. So I think that has been probably one of the biggest things around that professionalisation. I then think the professionalisation in terms of having professional players. I think we're almost able to, I think it is the WSL 2, which will be in the new season. I believe will be fully professional. So we've got 2 fully professional where, it's a player's full-time job where, at Doncaster Belles, I think we had a hybrid. I think we probably had, when I was there, like maybe 4 players that were able to dedicate their time to football, and everybody else was juggling a full-time job plus football, which was, a huge credit to them. Mm-hmm. So I think the professionalization in terms of being able to have players that can dedicate their time and be paid for that, and the professionalization of the programs, and have, again, similar, but being able to have, dedicated medical staff or dedicated sports science staff or dedicated goalkeeper staff. And I think that professionalization and wanting to be seen as a professional outfit, I think that's probably the biggest part of it. Not only in England, but across Europe and across the globe as well. And I think the next cycle will be around commercial growth.
Perfect. That's all my questions. Thanks for agreeing to sort of come on and speak in such fantastic detail. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, my pleasure. Loved it, and I'll watch through back any of the other podcasts that you've done and get on board and keep flying the flag for Doncaster Rovers Belles.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode. Make sure to keep up to date with everything on the South Yorkshire Women's Football website and across our social media channels.